Another gold company is getting involved in the uranium space, or at least that's what it looked like on the surface this week when Palisades Gold Corp, an investment firm focused on the gold space, announced that they were acquiring Radio Fuels, who is known for their uranium asset in Ontario. But as it turns out, Palisades actually appears entirely uninterested in the uranium assets and instead was after something else. Let's dive in. All right, let's start with the high level. Palisades Gold Corp is set to acquire Radio Fuels in an all-stock transaction, which is said to create a resource-focused investment company whose main attraction is a balance sheet with $120 million in cash and marketable securities. Under the terms of the deal, Radio Fuels shareholders are set to receive roughly zero point zero 0.06 of a Palisades share for each share of Radio Fuels they hold, which, based on the most recent closing price of both equities at the time of the announcement, values each Radio Fuel share at 8.2 cents. And for reference, Radio Fuels most recently closed at 8.5 cents. So somehow the company had agreed to a price below their most recent value as described by the market. The exchange rate as a whole valued the Uranium Explorer at about $11.4 million, which really wasn't a bad deal for Palisades, considering Radio Fuels, as of August 31st, had $26 million in investments, as well as $2.3 million in notes receivable, which is offset slightly by a $1.9 million debt in a margin account. Those investments were spread across a plethora of gold names, including Ascot Resources, Impact Silver, and Juggernaut Exploration, among other names. This conveniently jives quite well with Palisades' stated objective on a post-transaction basis. On top of the balance sheet position, Palisades also highlighted that they will become the third largest claim holder in Nevada as a result of the transaction. They'll also gain a 3% net smelter royalty on Nevada King's Atlanta Gold Project. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. While it may look like a newly announced transaction, digging deeper reveals it to actually be a long time coming. The transition of Radio Fuels began over a year ago, when in the third fiscal quarter of 2023, the company elected to write off their exploration assets, an impairment which cost them over $21 million. The Associated notes on the impairment simply stated that the impairment was related to projects no longer being explored. More specifically, they had written off the value of their assets in Elliott Lake and Sault Ste. Marie, which includes the Eco Ridge project, which boasts 107 million pounds of U3O8 equivalent in indicated and inferred resources. While there was some uproar at the time, the company basically ignored all criticism and carried on with a mandate that was refocused to a strategy of investment in the junior sector. And in January, they appointed the former COO of Palisades, Philip O'Neill, as the CEO of the company. We should also note here that one of the founders of Radio Fuels, Colin Cattell, is also the founder of Palisades, among a number of other ventures in the industry, including Newfound Gold and Nevada King Gold. Fast forward to August, and Radio Fuels announced that they would be acquiring NV King Gold Lands, which less than a month earlier had been spun out of Nevada King Gold. The involvement of Nevada King Gold in the storyline begins back in February, less than 2 weeks after O'Neill's appointment to the role of CEO of Radio Fuels. On February 12th, Nevada King announced that they would be conducting a strategic reorganization that would see all of their concessions and properties, with the exception of the Atlanta gold mine, spun out to Nevada King shareholders. In addition, a 3% royalty on gold and silver produced at the Atlanta mine would be included in the spinout. Specifically, the spinout was to hold over 9,600 claims in Nevada along the Battle Mountain Trend, which covers over 193,000 acres. The sheer size of the claims would make the SpinCo, later referred to as NV King Gold Lands, the third largest claim holder in the state, behind Nevada Gold Mines, which is a venture between Barrick, Newmont, and Kinross. The argument for the spinout was to unlock value for the large portfolio of mineral claims, with Colin Cattell, CEO of Nevada King at the time, saying that they would create a standalone focused company holding Nevada King's large portfolio of claims along the Battle Mountain Trend, which will create an exciting growth-focused story with a dominant land position along one of the world's most prolific gold mining trends. The spinout was later approved on July 22nd by shareholders of Nevada King, while court approval was granted days later on July 26. On August 1st, the spinout was completed. And less than 4 weeks later, it was announced that Kettle's other venture, Radio Fuels, would be acquiring the SpinCo. Okay, so let's tie it all together. The acquisition of Nevada King's spinout at the time of the announcement was described as a way for Radio Fuels to expand their project portfolio dramatically, while still providing unparalleled leverage to uranium and rare earth elements via the Eco Ridge project in Ontario, which, if you recall, they had written off a year prior but appear to still have maintained the claims. Basically, it was advertised as uranium investors gaining exposure to gold and gold investors gaining exposure to uranium, with a sweetener of $20 million in cash and marketable securities sitting on top in the form of Radio Fuels portfolio investments. Under the terms of the deal, NV King Goldland shareholders received 8.7 shares of Radio Fuels for every share of NV King Goldland held, which resulted in these shareholders taking 40% ownership of Radio Fuels. The transaction officially closed on November 20th. And now, roughly 2 weeks later, we get the announcement that Radio Fuels is to be acquired by Palisades Gold Corp. For those of you following along, these claims in Nevada and the Atlanta royalty over the last year will have gone from Nevada King Gold to NV King Goldlands to Radio Fuels, and finally to Palisades, which we suspect will be their final stop, at least for a time. To an outsider, it looks like a messy way of essentially getting a royalty for the Atlanta mine, which currently has a pit-constrained resource of 460,000 gold ounces measured and indicated at 1.3 grams per ton, and a further 142,000 inferred ounces at 0.83 grams per ton, plus a bunch of recent discoveries into Palisades at the cost of what basically amounts to lawyer fees across a couple of transactions, with the added bonus of diversifying Palisades' current investment portfolio a bit. But who am I to judge? Okay, so let's wrap it up. The acquisition of Radio Fuels by Palisades is set to close in February of 2025. Of course, it's going to be subject to shareholder approval by Radio Fuels shareholders at a meeting scheduled for the end of January. 32.5% of the vote has already been locked up in favor of the transaction, and it's highly likely that it's going to close. Shareholders rarely vote down a transaction. One thing I want to be clear about here is that I'm not claiming that anything nefarious is going on. Rather, this was an exercise to demonstrate to retail shareholders how money tends to flow in the junior mining industry. Along the way of each of these transactions, shareholders cheered each step on, claiming that each step would be a positive move for them and their investment. But taking things back a step and looking at the big picture and how the capital moves about, it often makes things a little bit more clear if you're trying to understand how things are working out for you when you're babysitting your investments. All right, everybody, let me know what you think of the transactions in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And guys, thank you for taking the time to watching. I appreciate you all.